RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And, of course, welcome back. Yes, my friends, to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a great day. Hope you had a good weekend. We've got a very special show for you today, and I do also have a very special guest on the front end of the program. Friend of mine by the name of James Wiley, who just happens to be a candidate for Secretary of State in Colorado. This man is a patriot. I know him because of the Dominion Voting Systems class action lawsuit. We've been acquaintances for several years, and it's great to see him getting involved in politics. Obviously, Colorado is one of those places where we desperately need adequate representation. So he's going to be going up against Jenna Griswold, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think she's term limited or anything. But either way, James will take us through all of that. Looking forward to a quick conversation with him. Want to hear about his platform, and also I want to suggest to each and every one of you out there, if you live in the state of Colorado, I know this man personally, and he is somebody that you should vote for. Now, primarily today, we are going to be talking about the current case before the Supreme Court of the United States dealing with mail-in ballots and the ridiculous things that happen in red states around the country where they just count ballots forever. So do me a favor, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn. And we're going to get into it right about now. All right, my friends, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. And I am going to, first of all, show you James's X account. If you guys wouldn't mind, go and give James a follow. He's over here on X at Red Flame Liberty. Red Flame Liberty. And you can follow along with this campaign at redflameofliberty.com. James, your camera is tilted to the wrong way. I don't know if you've got the lock on. I will give you a moment to fix that before we bring you on scene for the audience. All right, there. Good. Looking good. Now let me get you pulled up here. And that is going to be this one right here. All right, James, it's so good to see you, man. When I saw that you were running for Secretary of State in Colorado, I was like, I know this guy. I'm so stoked about this. How you been?
Doing great, Zach. It's great to see your face. I missed you a lot these last few years. It's great to be looped back on election integrity, and I'm glad to see you're still in the fight as well.
Absolutely. I will never give up the fight. This is something I plan to do for as long as I possibly can. So, you are obviously a Colorado resident. You have been firsthand witness to a lot of the shenanigans. That's a very, very generous way to put it. But you could also say fraud. You could say open corruption. But generally speaking, problems with the elections in Colorado and around the country. What was it that led you to decide to make this run?
Yeah, it's been a long journey, the last 6 years since the election integrity movement really kicked off on the Republican side of things. After 2020, being involved in the Dominion class action lawsuits, which was the subject of the interviews. I was not interviewed specifically by you, but I was in the background pulling the strings for helping out a couple of the attorneys that you were interviewing, Gary Fielder and Ernest Walker. And then in 2022, we had another round of excitement with the recounts here in Colorado. And one of the candidates that demanded a recount had the pleasure of interviewing with you then as well. But really, Jenna Griswold has been the nexus of the election fraud here in Colorado. And I've been the chief of confronting her at every opportunity. Even more recently in 2024, after all those recounts in 22, I had the pleasure of suing Jenna Griswold again over the BIOS passwords that she published everywhere. So I was a candidate for Congress, and I used my candidacy to gain standing and sued Jenna Griswold over that situation. And since then, the last couple of years, I've been deeply involved in the Libertarian Party. I was the executive director here in Colorado, and we were making a lot of moves in collaboration with the Republican Party. But unfortunately, the Libertarian Party got undermined a little bit from communist influences, and so I was not able to continue in the leadership capacity there. And I was already a candidate for Secretary of State with the Libertarian Party, just holding on in case I needed to sue Jenna as a candidate in that capacity. But beyond that, I saw this window, that this gap was open and available to me and my campaign. There was no major Republican contenders like Joe Altman or somebody else here in Colorado was not stepping up for the Secretary of State's race. He is running for governor, but the Secretary of State's race was vacant as far as election integrity leader. And so I decided to go ahead and switch from Libertarian to Republican. And I did that right before the deadline in December. And so the last 3 months now, I've been on the campaign trail, definitely proven myself to the Republican Party as an ally. I've been an ally for many years in election integrity, but earning their trust and earning their vote. I'm going through assembly next month. And so that's kind of the journey that it's been. And I'm really proud and honored to be able to be a messenger, carry this message of election integrity. It's not about me. It's not about my campaign. It's about having the resistance against voter fraud present here within this within this election cycle. And so I'm really glad to be able to represent that.
Awesome. Well, I mean, you're saying all the right things, and I'm glad to know that you are out there, because I had not heard of any viable Republican candidates that were running for this office. I mean, it seems that Colorado, in a manner of speaking, seems like a state that's kind of been abandoned by the official Republican Party. I mean, after you threw your hat in the ring, did anybody try to step forward? I mean, has the GOP gone and supported you in any meaningful way, or is it like they normally do when an upstart candidate comes along and they kind of want to see what you're going to be able to do on your own?
Yeah, it's been kind of see what he's made of. And so I've hit the campaign trail. I've spoken at over 30 events so far just in the last few months, and I got to know a lot of different people in different counties, attended dinners, attended assemblies. I did 5 assemblies in one day just on Saturday, and I got more assemblies coming up soon here. So I've definitely been working hard to earn that support, not assuming that it's going to be granted to me for any element of my resume in the past. But really, the Republican Party, like you said, it's been somewhat abandoned by the National Party. Here in Colorado, there's not much interest. In fact, the National Party controls the website for the state GOP, and the website's down right now. So I'm not sure what's going on there. But that's an illustration of the chaos, and the chair of the party just resigned a week ago, and other things are total chaos here in Colorado, except we have a message that we can all get behind, and that's election integrity. And I hope to be a uniting candidate for both the rhinos and the grassroots and everybody else in Colorado who's at each other's throats instead of the communist throats where they belong.
Exactly.
We've got all this infighting, and me as an outsider, I'm able to kind of skate over that as much as I can and preach a message of unity.
Well, I mean, election security, election integrity, I mean, this is the one thing that I think we can get behind. And obviously, it's an auspicious time with the fight going on currently in the Senate over the Save America Act, and so much attention that's being paid to this now. I mean, it's quite obvious that the majority of the country, I mean, we've come a long way, shall we say, James? You know, I mean, like many people have really come around on this issue, and they understand that a nation without borders, first of all, is a no nation at all. A nation that doesn't secure its elections cannot secure its own future. And at that point, we might as well just give up on everything. But obviously, there are many people out there who have refused to do so. It's funny you mentioned the chair of the party resigning. I actually have a friend who's an activist in Colorado, my friend Ash Epps, and she had said that people had called her and was like, "Hey, are you interested in maybe becoming a politico here in the state of Colorado?" And she was like, "That's not my bag. Like, I am totally on the other side of this of this fight, and I will be happy to help support people who are." But yeah, that wasn't for her.
Yeah, Ash would be a great leader, but I know that she's working on advancing her journalism career and exposing corruption through that mechanism. So
Yes.
I appreciate the work that she's doing. I don't know what victim that they're going to find to fill that role next. I hope it's not me.
Oh, man. Okay, so what has the response been from the people as you're out on the campaign trail? I mean, because, again, obviously, there's no other viable candidate. It's got to feel a little bit like the Twilight Zone. You have somebody come in who, number one, is very knowledgeable about this subject, has already been working in the space for quite some time, and you essentially just come in and say, hey, I'm looking to fight for the things that, may make it so that I don't get elected in the future. I want to know that the elections are safe and secure, even if that means that people that you don't like get elected. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about necessarily whom you want to see in that office. It's about knowing that whoever is elected to that office is the person that people actually voted for.
Yeah, it's been a really warm reception. Everywhere I've gone, the message has resonated. I haven't been confronted by anybody saying, no, we have gold standard elections. I think pretty much every Republican that I've met, and I am meeting pretty much exclusively Republicans at this point, has been in support of that position. And that is what we need, is we need a single battle, a single front that we can fight and be united in that pursuit. So that's been promising. Of course, as that's developed, I've gotten into minor conflicts with different influencers on Twitter and in the comment section. That's been a little bit spicy, but I've been accused of being a communist. I've been accused of being a Zionist infiltrator and all these other things. And it's like, hey, you guys should know me. I've been around. I'm not new. I'm new to the party, but I'm not new to the scene. So that's been a little entertaining. But in general, it's been a really, really positive reception, and people are excited about the campaign. I've gotten more and more support. Just a couple days ago, Mark Cook, who's got a national following for his hand count road show, he endorsed me and put out a video for that. So I'm starting to get more traction, especially the old crowd saying, oh, wait, actually, he's serious about this. And so they're starting to see me, the old election integrity people from back in the day, and I'm starting to get some of their support as well. So the momentum is really building, and I think coming into the assembly, I'm hoping to really box out the opposition and maybe circumvent the primary entirely. Nobody's petitioning onto the ballot.
Whoa!
In Colorado, you could petition or go through assembly. I'm not petitioning either, just doing assembly. So there is one other candidate who I've seen him at a couple of events, but he's not drawn the energy like I am. So it's possible I could box him out and be the default for the general. That'd be great.
Dude, that's so awesome. Okay.
No Pam Anderson, that's for sure.
So you've also had an opportunity to testify on election issues related to Colorado. Tell us a little bit about that, because people may have seen your testimony online.
Yeah, so Jenna Griswold, every once in a while, basically each year, she's required to come before the Joint Committee between the House and the Senate here in Colorado and testify to them about the elections. And so I show up there and I sit behind her to the side a little bit and enjoy her trying to defend her position while the couple of Republican people still in the legislature grill her on different points. And I coordinate with those Republicans and make sure that they're prepared to ask pointed questions. And then she gets up and runs away before the public testimony comes. And so I come and I sit in the chair that she was in. I'm like, well, I would have loved to say this directly to your face, because every time I've sued Jenna Griswold, and it's 5 times now, she never shows up to court. She sends some other patsy to go defend her position. So I crave that confrontation, but she runs away from it.
Well, maybe you'll have the opportunity to debate her, James. Perhaps.
Well, she's running for Attorney General. So
she's not going to be. Okay. I'm sorry.
But actually, one of the candidates who is running for Secretary of State on the Democrat side, I've sued her, and she's a clerk. So that would be a fun debate if we had that opportunity. But no, she runs away, and she's not willing to confront that. But really, I've tried to drill into the element of the recounts, because that was an egregious crime that she committed by telling people that you can't do a hand recount, you have to use the machines for recount. Mm-hmm. The whole purpose of a recount is you suspect that the method of tabulation isn't legitimate.
Right.
And to use the same method of tabulation, that's just wrong.
Yeah, fundamentally. All right, James, tell everybody where they can find you, and if you have any parting words for the audience before we send you off, please, you've got the floor.
Sure. You can find my website, redflameofliberty.com. It's easy to remember. So redflameliberty.com, and I'm taking support. I'm taking volunteers, donations. As long as you're in the United States, you could donate to my campaign. And I got one other spicy thing that I've got coming down the pipeline. 17 states in the union use semi-open primaries in which unaffiliated voters are raiding the primaries of one of the two major parties. And I've identified that as a huge cause of the discontent of the population with our political process. We have more than a right to assemble. We have a duty to assemble. And by there being a perverse incentive for people to stay unaffiliated, we've actually created a big problem. So I've got a potential lawsuit against Jenna Griswold that I'm going to be dropping soon here to help fix our primaries.
Excellent. Well, I am looking forward to it. I'm certainly enjoying watching your campaign as it progresses, and I hopefully get to report on you having some good news a little bit later in the year when we get to the general election. So, James, thank you very much for being here, buddy. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Zach.
All right.
Appreciate you.
We'll talk to you soon, brother. We'll see you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much to James Wiley. And if you wanted to follow him on X, you can do that right here at Red Flame Liberty. His last name is spelled Wiley. James Wiley for Secretary of State. You can see here. And best of all, no, I'm not a Jew basher. Here, he says right here on his bio, dark MAGA, far-right, libertarian, nationalist, Republican, Red Flame of Liberty, Secretary at Chainsaw Caucus at Colorado GOP, Secretary of State candidate 2026. So you know exactly who he is. Yeah, I am open to criticism of any government, be it domestic or foreign, for the actions they take that are bad for freedom, are bad for liberty. And if those people happen to be Jews, they just happen to be Jews. If they happen to be Christians, they happen to be Christians. If they happen to be Muslims, they happen to be Muslims. And there's nothing I can do about it except call out their bad behavior. All right, we are going to begin today with the news that I'm sure each and every one of you is aware of. And that news is that Robert Mueller, former special counsel Robert Mueller, former FBI director Robert Mueller, is dead. And President Trump is happy about it. He said, Robert Mueller just died. Good. I'm glad he's dead. This is the most savage tweet I have ever seen. He can no longer hurt innocent people. President Donald J. Trump. Now, President Donald J. Trump, of course, tweeting about this has set off people all across the internet. People have something to say about this. Oh, a president should never be happy about somebody who died. Okay, well, you all know what Robert Mueller did to President Trump and his people, everybody surrounding him. The special counsel's investigation wasted over $30 million. Okay, best of all. I'm not mad at you, best of all, so don't worry. But it's okay. All right. Now, Robert Mueller wasted $32 million in 2 years of the American people's time and, of course, President Trump and his close associates' time. And during the time that he was the special counsel, it was very obvious that Robert Mueller, much like Joseph Robinette Biden, was in some form of dementia or Parkinson's. There was a degenerative disorder with his brain, and I believe that his cause of death was complications from Parkinson's. He had originally, several months ago, been subpoenaed by the Oversight Committee to come in and testify about his knowledge related to the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, he never did that because he was near his deathbed. And as the world watched Robert Mueller testify after the conclusion of the special counsel's investigation, it became patently obvious to everybody watching that more than likely during the last 2 years, as those tens of millions of dollars of American taxpayer money was being spent, Robert Mueller was likely not in control of the special counsel's probe. He was merely a figurehead. He was chosen as somebody who had previously been held up as some kind of a Boy Scout. And he damaged his own reputation when he came out and gave that testimony. He had difficulty following the questions. He could not answer certain questions. He had handlers to his right and to his left. They were helping him to answer the questions and not even doing a particularly good job about it. Now, you know that Mueller, as FBI director, he became FBI director just a couple of days before September 11th, 2001. So he was directly involved in the transformation of the Federal Bureau of Investigation from a crime-fighting organization to sort of an intelligence gathering organization. And as he remained FBI director, both during the Bush administration and then into the Obama administration, he was the one who was responsible for switching from the IRS database to using the NSA database for political spying operations. Even more so, driving home the point that the FBI became an intelligence organization rather than a law enforcement organization. Now, Mueller had a vested interest in covering that up for a very long time. And a man by the name of Aaron Zebley was his chief of staff in 2012 at the time that that decision was made. Now, guess what? Aaron Zebley was also an integral part of the special counsel's investigation. You know who else was an integral part of the special counsel investigation? That was Andrew Weissman. Andrew Weissman, who I'm hoping is going to be subpoenaed for the grand conspiracy grand jury investigation currently taking place in the Southern District of Florida in Fort Pierce. Andrew Weissman, of course, is a contributor for MS Now, and we just talked about Andrew Weissman last week when he was questioned by MS Now about James Comey's subpoena to come on down and answer some questions about all of the things that have happened over the years. Now, one of those people whose life was nearly destroyed is Roger Stone. And Roger Stone wrote a lengthy article. We're going to begin by reading that article. Now, Roger Stone was not the only person who nearly had their life ruined by Robert Mueller. There was another man who was the subject of the Mueller probe, and Mueller and Weissman and his special counsel team, they essentially harassed this guy until eventually he killed himself, and no charges were ever filed against him. In fact, it came out later that the man had never done anything wrong. Ideally, Mueller and his team were hoping to get this guy to turn on President Trump. So Roger begins by saying it was a lie then, and it's a lie now. This is also part of the reason why Roger Stone hates Steve Bannon so much. On February 20th of 2025, UPI helpfully noted that it was 4 years ago on that day that I was sentenced to 40 years in prison based on my conviction in the Soviet-style show trial that I was subjected to in Washington, D.C., in 2020. Now, needless to say, UPI neglected to mention that President Trump not only commuted my sentence, but on December 23rd, 2020, issued me a full and unconditional presidential pardon, which means Roger still gets the right to vote, own firearms, and continue to live life in the best way that he possibly can. More strikingly, UPI also failed to note that after my trial, a lawsuit by BuzzFeed against the DOJ forced the department to release the full unredacted version of special counsel Robert Mueller's full report, which proved definitively that Mueller had no factual basis, that's a direct quote, to prosecute me for Russian collusion, collaborations with WikiLeaks, or for that matter, any other crime, which is why I was indicted on clever and convoluted process charges in order to pressure me to testify falsely against President Donald J. Trump, which I, of course, refused to do. Now, specifically, Mueller's long-hidden, long-redacted final report noted on page 178. The office's determination that it could not charge WikiLeaks or Stone as part of the Section 1030 conspiracy was also informed by the constitutional issues that such a prosecution would present. Under the Supreme Court's decision in Bartnicki versus Vopper, 532 U.S. 514 in 2001. The First Amendment protects a party's publication of illegally intercepted communications as a matter of public concern, even when the publishing parties knew or had reason to know of the intercept's unlawful origin. Also, on that same page, the office determined that it could not pursue a Section 1030 conspiracy charge against Stone for some of the same legal reasons. The most fundamental hurdles, though, are factual ones. 1279, as explained in Volume 1, Section III.1, Supra, Corsi's accounts of his interactions with Stone on October 7th, 2016 are not fully consistent or corroborated. Even if they were, neither Corsi's testimony nor other evidence currently available to the office is sufficient to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Stone knew or believed that the computer intrusions were ongoing at the time he ostensibly encouraged or coordinated the publication of the Podesta emails. Stone's actions would thus be consistent with, among other things, a belief that he was aiding in the dissemination of the fruits of an already completed hacking operation perpetrated by a third party, which would be a level of knowledge insufficient to establish conspiracy liability. See this case that they reference. In the very nature of things, persons cannot retroactively conspire to commit a previously consummated crime. Regardless, success would also depend upon evidence of WikiLeaks and Stone's knowledge of ongoing or contemplated future computer intrusions, the proof that is currently lacking. Now, Judge Amy Berman withheld that information from Roger Stone's lawyer at trial. The Mueller's dirty cops concluded in their report that even if they had found evidence that I had received documents from Assange of WikiLeaks and passed them to anyone, which I did not, and for which they had no evidence of whatsoever, it would not have been illegal. The whole thing was a hoax. After being unconstitutionally gagged before, during, and after my trial, as well as being banned for life on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, I was ultimately reinstated on X, as well as establishing a healthy following on Truth Social, finally affording me the opportunity to lay out the facts regarding the legal lynching I was subjected to, as well as the ongoing smears of a number of ex-trolls who continue to accuse me falsely of being a Russian traitor. Now, these are the facts. Anyone who actually followed my trial would know the federal prosecutors provided no evidence whatsoever of Russian collusion with the Trump campaign at my trial. In fact, in pretrial motions, the government moved that they did not have to prove that there was any Russian collusion with the Trump campaign or that the Democratic National Committee had, in fact, been the target of an online hack with the purloined data going to WikiLeaks in order to convict me. And the judge granted their motion. Those who actually followed my legal lynching in a D.C. courtroom would also know that the judge denied my defense attorney a sealed report from the private company CrowdStrike, which was, of course, retained by the DNC. That report supposedly contained proof of this Russian hack. Only when the sworn testimony of CrowdStrike head Sean Henry, conveniently a former deputy to none other than Robert Mueller at the FBI, was declassified and released, did we learn that CrowdStrike had no proof whatsoever that the Russians conducted an online hack of the DNC. It was in my trial that the DOJ admitted that, for some strange reason, the FBI never inspected the DNC computer servers to detect whether there was an online hack. Given their role in directing the silencing of pro-Trump voices on Twitter, we now see why. I was convicted of lying to Congress in my voluntary testimony to the House Intelligence Committee, despite the lack of any motive on my part to lie. There was no Russian collusion. There was no WikiLeaks collaboration to lie about. In fact, no misstatement that I made under oath was material or hid any underlying crime, never mind Russian collusion. The prosecutors provided no proof that I was a go-between for WikiLeaks and the Trump campaign, as the fake news media had more than speculated about, or that I had any involvement in the timing of the devastating WikiLeaks disclosures that rocked Hillary Clinton back on her heels. The idea that I was covering up for Donald Trump, as the judge said in her sentencing tirade against me, is false. There was nothing to cover up. Even the much-hyped claim that my innocuous Twitter direct messages exchanged with the persona of Guccifer 2.0, who then CIA Director John Brennan and FBI Director James Comey insist is a Russian intelligence asset, is flawed. The 28-word exchange itself is innocuous. It took place 3 months after WikiLeaks had already published the DNC material, meaning my involvement would have been chronologically impossible, and the insistence that Guccifer 2.0 is in fact a Russian spy is contradicted by substantial evidence that he is a U.S. intelligence-created operative. Even if he was a Russian hacker, my limited exchange with him provides no evidence that we coordinated or colluded in any way. I myself fully released our Twitter DM exchange, and I voluntarily turned it over to the House Intelligence Committee when I testified. It proves nothing. Nonetheless, when I was pardoned, Mueller attacked me in a Washington Post op-ed, probably ghostwritten by Weissman, in which Mueller said, I was communicating with Russian intelligence assets. It's another Fugazi. Federal prosecutors in my trial insisted that my case had to be in front of Amy Berman Jackson because my case was related to the case Mueller brought against 17 alleged Russian intelligence agents, a case that has never even gone to discovery, never mind trial. In fact, Assistant U.S. Attorney Jonathan Kravis told the judge that federal prosecutors who present evidence against me gleaned against me in search warrants and in that case at trial, but never did. That's because no such evidence exists. The judge denied my lawyer's attempt to introduce forensic evidence or expert testimony to challenge the claim that the DNC had been hacked by Russians. When my lawyers challenged the government's lack of evidence of a Russian hack of the DNC, the underlying premise of my indictment, Kravis filed a rare sir reply with the court, insisting that the government had proof beyond the CrowdStrike report that the Russians hacked the DNC. And guess what? They don't. And they never did. Now, would most of the public know that nor would most of the public know that on November 3rd, 2020, only by court order, in a lawsuit brought by the BuzzFeed, did the Department of Justice release the last remaining redacted and long-hidden portions of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's final report, in which even he could not sugarcoat the fact that despite his wide and unprecedented legal authority on an unlimited budget, he could find no factual evidence that I had engaged in Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaboration, or played any role in the phishing or publication of John Podesta's highly embarrassing emails. Only BuzzFeed, The Gateway Pundit, and Zero Hedge reported on this stunning DOJ release at midnight on Election Day, the busiest media day of the year. And strangely, the Zero Hedge story is no longer online, but the Wayback Machine finds it. The judge also withheld this exculpatory portion of Mueller's report from my own defense attorneys at trial. And so on and so on. Robert Mueller and his team faked their way into a series of attempts to destroy people associated with Donald Trump. The entire thing was merely an attempt to get Roger Stone to testify against Donald Trump for something that he never did. Now, Roger Stone is not the only person, but he is one of the best known people to have had their life ruined as a result of that investigation. And Robert Mueller's only sin is not merely the Mueller special counsel affair, but also I mentioned that he was part of the FBI just days before the attacks of September 11th, 2001. And it would appear that it also included Robert Mueller's job at the FBI was to cover up the involvement of any foreign governments. One of those foreign governments was, in fact, of course, Saudi Arabia. Now, another foreign government that was likely involved was the Israeli government, because we had a series of Israeli Mossad agents that were arrested in New York on September 11th, and they ended up getting sent back only months later. The FBI did investigate that. Urban Moving Systems appeared to have been an Israeli operation there in New York City. They had foreknowledge of the September 11th attacks. They had been out doing reconnaissance on the day of. But the ultimate reason they were there will never be known, because those people were allowed to go back to Israel, and there was never any charges that were filed. And most of the evidence was destroyed because as soon as those movers were arrested for dancing across the New Jersey Strait, I don't know what the name of that river is there, watching the towers go down, they were arrested, and then everybody at Urban Moving Systems cleared out their hard drives, took all their stuff, and then left. Everything else was left inside the office. But of course, many of the people who were blamed for the September 11th attacks came from Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabian government was very different to the government that is currently running Saudi Arabia right now. And so ultimately, the true nature of Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11 is still to this day unknown, although the people who lost loved ones on September 11th oftentimes look to Saudi Arabia as one of the masterminds of the events that took place that day. Likely there was funding that was involved, but Robert Mueller, of course, helped to cover all of that up. Robert Mueller also was involved in the transfer of strategic reserves of uranium to Russia during the Uranium One scandal. Now, former FBI investigators came forward, and this article is from 7 years ago. I think we went over it actually at the time that it came out because it was in the midst of Mueller fever here in the United States. But many FBI agents came forward and said that their old boss, Robert Mueller, did not feel the same level of concern when they uncovered multiple systemic efforts by the Saudi government to assist these hijackers in the lead up to the 9/11 attacks, a far more consequential, to say nothing of deadly foreign influence operation in America. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I don't care what religion you are. I don't care what nation you hail from. What I care about is the sovereignty of the United States of America. I care about the safety and security of our citizens. And whether you're a representative of a foreign government or a representative of one of our own intelligence agencies, I am not about to let people get a free pass on bad behavior. Now, Robert Mueller, again, was the head of the FBI. He was not interested, apparently, in investigating the espionage conspiracy at the heart of 9/11. There were definitely foreign intelligence officers from a number of countries who were involved in the events of that day. If I had to guess, I would say that the Central Intelligence Agency and the deep state at large farmed out certain aspects of the false flag operation to various intelligence pieces from other foreign governments, because the deep state is the deep state, regardless of whatever country you actually were born in. But 9/11 victims agreed that he was the master when it came to covering up whatever role Saudi Arabia had in 9/11. In October of 2001, Mueller actually shut down the government's investigation after only 3 weeks. And then he took part in the Bush administration's campaign to block, obfuscate, and generally stop anything related to Saudi Arabia from being released. And again, of course, when the director of the FBI is saying, hey, you can't release anything about this country or that country, it's going to make everybody want to look into those countries all the same. So I echo President Trump's sentiment from early in the program. I, too, am glad that Robert Mueller is dead. I believe that Robert Mueller was an evil man. I believe that Robert Mueller was a traitor to the United States of America. And I believe that Robert Mueller was directly responsible for deaths of American citizens. Robert Mueller was directly responsible for the destruction of multiple people's lives. And Robert Mueller is not someone who we should offer any sympathy to. I am trying to stream on X, and I'm just realizing that although my stream is live, it's not actually working, and the stupid Norton antivirus pop-up bullshit on my computer, I cannot get it to stop. It is so annoying. Yeah, well, Lainey Lou, Saudi Arabia is where Dopey Al-Walid hailed from. So because Al-Walid had never been named specifically, signs pointed to Saudi Arabia. It's like, you're using that as a placeholder to identify where the investigation needs to go. That's why I was very careful not to, indict the entire nation of Saudi Arabia. It was whomever was in power at that time. And of course, Al-Walid bin Talal certainly was one of those people. I don't have anything installed on my computer, Missy. That's the thing. It's just a pop-up that comes from the Gateway Pundit, which is really annoying. All right. Now, very different from the response by President Trump. We have a statement here from Barack Hussein Obama. Again, Robert Mueller served still as the director of the FBI under Obama. And Barack Obama said this: Bob Mueller was one of the finest directors in the history of the FBI, transforming the Bureau after 9/11 and saving countless lives. But it was his relentless commitment to the rule of law and his unwavering belief in our bedrock values that made him one of the most respected public servants of our time. Michelle and I send our condolences to Bob's family and everyone who knew and admired him. Now, of course, the internet did not take kindly to that. Let's see. Molly Hemingway, far and away the worst and most vile presidential comment today on the man who was the titular head of a horrific operation to destroy countless lives, overturn a presidential election, and obliterate any trust whatsoever in federal government. Oh, let's see. Obama spied on President Trump. Hillary lied about Russian collusion, and the entire Democrat Party pushed the lies and then impeached President Trump. Classic TDS. Barack Obama, don't think anybody really admired Mueller except maybe you and the rest of the deep staters that were cheering on his vile political persecution, or your competition like the current president, real Donald Trump, that trounced you guys in the end anyways. Respected, Robert Mueller was the poisonous tip of Russiagate, a hoax and a conspired plot against President Trump. And of course, DNI Gabbard calls it treasonous. And that is notable because, of course, Barack Hussein Obama was directly involved. But anyways, if you go look at that tweet, you're going to see time and time again, over and over again, people just savaging Obama. And I can just see him, like, you know, cuddling up to Michelle's lap and sobbing as people are taking him to the woodshed. All right, now, this is interesting, and it's also very notable because it's happening like just a day or so after Robert Mueller is declared dead. Apparently, the FBI has just found an additional 1.9 million pages of missing records in another secret room at the FBI headquarters that was maintained by former directors James Comey and Christopher Wray. Now, this is coming as a result of a Judicial Watch Freedom of Information Act request. This is SCIF material, sensitive compartmentalized information facility material, and it contains several safes that were holding these docs, including one that was generated from Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. So I think that we're about to get some additional disclosure related to Mueller. Maybe this is also going to come up in relation to the special grand jury investigation that is currently taking place down in Fort Pierce, Florida. Who knows? We'll see. But I feel like they were waiting for Mueller to die on this one, maybe. The Steel Monkey says, Wiley. Is that the way it's spelled? That is Wiley is the way that it's spelled, Steel Monkey. And Surter, 1959, says, Barry is cuddling up to Big Mike's a Big Mike. Yes, that's right. All right. So anyways, looking for information to come out rather quickly on that. I can only imagine what it is they're finding. We're going to jump now to the situation relating to Iran. So over the weekend, Iran, well, it was claimed, and I got to say it that way because Iran is actually denying it. It was claimed that Iran shot 2 intercontinental ballistic missiles at Diego Garcia military base, which is like in the middle of nowhere in the ocean. If it was Iran, it was a strategic blunder, but it also would have been a show of force because it would prove that they have the capabilities to send ballistic missiles to that distance. Now, if you go in concentric circles from the point of the missiles being shot off, it would mean that Iran basically has the capability to destroy all of Europe, okay? Probably not the smartest move to make in the midst of all of this chaos, which may have something to do with why you can't find him on X, honey. Let me share the link to his X again in the chat. Yeah, our B-52s take off from Diego Garcia. So if they were to hit Diego Garcia, it would be of course, like a bad place for us to get hit. I don't think that we have like missile interceptors at Diego Garcia. It's always kind of been considered to be just so far out in the middle of nowhere that it's basically untouchable. But again, if you'll see from the way President Trump reacted, he basically put them on notice. But we don't know that it was Iran because from what I understand, there is no specific location of where it was supposed to have been launched. Iran denies that they sent these missiles. The missiles didn't hit. They hit near Diego Garcia. There like really was no damage to the base. So it wasn't a successful strike. The only country that I have seen conclusively say that it was Iran is Israel. And of course, Israel has a vested interest in making the world believe that Iran might kill all of these countries that they could hit, because Israel is currently in the midst of their own military objectives. They just want to see Iran wiped off the map. The United States, President Trump, wants to see Iran join the global order, and they want peace in the region. So the objectives are not the same. But the UK is one of those countries that theoretically could be hit by some of these Iranian intercontinental ballistic missiles, if that is a narrative that holds up at the end of the day. Oh, my God. Hang on. I got to get my desk up here. Now, the UK is in a bad spot, okay? I saw a video talking about the state of the UK's Navy over the weekend. And, Mike, let me tell you guys, this is like a ragtag group of broken down ships. Let me see if I can actually find a picture. UK Navy. Like, I couldn't believe how scrappy these boats looked. Oh, of course, these are probably going to be like the best examples of them, but they don't. The English Navy used to be hailed as one of the most powerful cadres of ships in the world, and it's just really not that way anymore. And of course, Keir Starmer, he's weak. He really doesn't want to get involved in this. He's got a lot of Muslims that live in his nation, and his position as prime minister kind of hinges upon the support of the Muslim community there. So Keir Starmer has delayed confirmation of the Iranian ballistic missile strikes against the UK and the US, because we are kind of joint operators there at Diego Garcia. But this island, again, is like 2,500 miles away from Iran. And here you can see from these concentric circles, if Iran was the one who sent these missiles off, then anything in this region is fair game. They can go pretty deep into Africa. They can basically hit the entirety of Europe. They could hit Russia. They could hit even into China. But they couldn't hit the United States. They could maybe hit United States bases, and that's basically all that they want. So I don't know if the UK's hesitancy to like 100% confirm that this is a actual Iranian tech, is it because of Keir Starmer not wanting to lose support? Is it because the British people would demand that the UK get involved in this conflict? Because up until this point, they've been pretty hesitant even to send ships out to the Straits of Hormuz. It seems like a natural objective for them because, of course, they do have a navy. And they are also, maybe part of the group of countries that could potentially benefit from the free flow of oil through that region. But Keir Starmer just does not look very good coming out of this. Now, after this attack, President Trump essentially threatened to wipe out a whole bunch of targets in Iran. He said that he was going to hit all of these Iranian energy generating facilities, electrical facilities, and he gave Iran a 48-hour ultimatum. So this is over the weekend. Now that ultimatum, that 48 hours has eclipsed. And Iran, in response, threatened to basically wipe out the infrastructure that keeps the Middle East alive. So that means, here is President Trump's initial response, because they had also shut down the Straits of Hormuz, or claimed that they were shutting down the Straits of Hormuz. And he said, if Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Straits of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States will hit and obliterate various power plants, starting with the biggest one first, Thank you for your attention to this matter. So then Iran replies, and they said, we have repeatedly said the Straits of Hormuz is closed only to the enemy and to harmful traffic, which essentially means they've said that the United States and Israel can't go through the Straits. But we don't go through the Straits, so that's not a really big deal. It is not being completely closed and is under our intelligent control, and harmless transit under specific regulations that ensure our security and interests is allowed. However, they got to swing their balls just as big as President Trump. The Strait of Hormuz will be, if the United States carries out its threats against Iran's power plants, the following punitive actions will be taken. The Strait of Hormuz will be completely closed. We will not reopen until our damaged power plants are rebuilt. That would take years, maybe a decade. All power plants and the energy and information technology infrastructure of Israel will now be widely targeted. All similar companies in the region that have American shareholders will be completely destroyed. Power plants in regional countries hosting U.S. bases will be considered legitimate targets. And they proceeded to name a bunch of targets off, and it was essentially no military targets. It was all civilian targets, like water desalination facilities and power plants and stuff like that. Saudi Arabia kicked all Iranian ambassadors out of their country because they were on that list. Qatar, of course, was also on that list. So over the weekend, President Trump had said that he was putting a pause on the possibility of an attack after that 48-hour timeline had elapsed. There was a strike by Iran on Dimona, which ironically is the location of the Dimona nuclear power plant, which is where Israel first enriched uranium to use in nuclear weapons with technology that they had taken from the United States of America during John F. Kennedy's administration. John F. Kennedy was very concerned about Israel gaining the technology to build a nuclear weapon for the very reason that we see instability in the region today. He knew that if Israel got nukes, then every other Muslim nation would want nukes because everybody would, it would be like a second Cold War, like the United States, China, and Russia all threatening each other with nukes. And JFK recognized that that was just not a situation that you wanted, because it's one thing to be ideologically and politically aligned against your enemies. It's another thing to be religiously aligned against your enemies, because when you got God at your back, you guys know that people, generally speaking, believe and wholeheartedly believe that they are correct, and nobody else is going to tell them anything any different than that. So he wrote on Truth Social, I am pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had over the last 2 days very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. Well, that's great news. That's so awesome to hear. Based on the tenor and tone of these in-depth, detailed, and constructive conversations, which will continue throughout the week, I have instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period, subject to the success of the ongoing meetings and discussions. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump. Now, I said this morning in speaking with Brian on Daily, I think we are very close to the end of this conflict. One of the reasons I think we're close to the end of this conflict is that you haven't seen a massive dip in the stock market, which means that, buying of shares, trading of stocks, it's been fairly normal. Also, oil prices have not gone out of control, which means that the people who are buying and selling oil believe that in the long run, and even in the short term, oil production is going to continue on at the same levels. You've seen, of course, a small uptick in the sale of barrels of oil, but it's not like a runaway train. The other thing that we've seen is that very recently Europe has started saying like, oh yeah, we're happy to, sort of get involved. We will go ahead and watch the Straits of Hormuz. If you look throughout history, Europe likes to stay out of conflicts. Like, by and large, they just want to be kind of neutral, and they don't really get involved until they know that that somebody is going to win. And, of course, it's going to be their allies. It's the United States. So all of those things together, it makes me think that we're not looking at some, long drawn out process, because you don't have the fear, you don't have the instability, and you have a level of confidence in European leaders that you don't tend to see until they know that the United States is going to be ready to kick some ass. So when President Trump announced that, hey, things are looking good, we're actually talking to the Iranians, we might be able to do this, we're going to bring this home, you guys, that was great news. But the only problem is that shortly after that, the Iranian media reports that President Trump is not talking to Iranian leaders. There is no such talks going on. Well, then, of course, that begs the question, if the people saying they're not talking to President Trump are the people who are reporting on the media in Iran, which is state-run, and of course it's, part of the Islamic government, then who the heck is President Trump talking to? That could be a very dangerous question, because President Trump has expressed on numerous occasions that he wants somebody else to take power in Iran who isn't going to be a crazy Islamist like the people who have been running it for the last 47 years. You don't feel too confident when you've got people running that government who are like death to America at every turn. So Iranian news media denies that any such talks are taking place. And Trump speaks to Maria Bartiromo yesterday, and he said, hey, I'm not aware of these reports in Iranian media. I don't know what they're talking about, but the conversations have taken place. My guys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, were meeting with Iranian representatives. So, of course, what does the mainstream media do here in the United States? They want to get the names. They ask President Trump, hey, who is it that you're talking to in Iran? And he's like, well, yeah, I'm not going to tell you that. I'm worried that the people who I'm talking to, their lives might be at risk if I tell you who they are. Now, after President Trump said that, hey, guess what? We're not going to hit Iran. You know what happened? There was a $2 trillion gain in the stock market. There was 240 points went up on the S&P 500. 27 minutes later, Iran says, we're not talking to President Trump, and boom, there's a quick sell-off. There's $1 trillion that's lost, but we're still up $1 trillion from that morning when President Trump came in. So what happens? Well, the Jerusalem Post, who I've already told you, the Israelis, they have different goals than the United States of America. What do? They basically go and identify the person that President Trump was talking to. My God, if the current Islamist government of Iran doesn't know that President Trump's people are having conversations with others in their government that are likely candidates to take over if and when the hostilities end, I don't think that guy is going to be too safe just walking around Iran. I mean, Iran has shown time and time again that they got no problem stringing people up in the streets if they think that they're traitors. They've got no problem just, killing people and giving them a quick trial. So you got to ask the question, why in the hell is the Jerusalem Post printing the name of the Iranian parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, when President Trump wasn't even willing to say that guy's name publicly? Now his name is out there, and the Iranian regime is probably going to be like, what the hell are you doing, dude? And maybe we should just kill you so that you can't have these conversations. Here is President Trump commenting and stating to the press that he's not going to give this person's name up.
Who is Steve Witkoff speaking with, Mr. President?
A top person. Don't forget, we've wiped out the leadership phase 1, phase 2, and largely phase 3. But we're dealing with the man who I believe is the most respected and the leader. It's a little tough. We've wiped out everybody.
Is that the Supreme Leader?
No, not the Supreme Leader. We don't.
Not much talk
Well, nobody heard of the second Supreme Leader, the son.
Are these direct?
We have not heard from the son. Every once in a while, you'll see a statement made, but we haven't. We don't know if he's living. But the people that seem to be running it, and they seem that based on really fact, because things they've said have taken place.
Mr. President,
Again,
Mr. President, I know you've deployed.
because I don't want him to be killed. Okay? I don't want him to be killed.
Mr. President, you deployed.
Nobody wants to be that. Nobody wants that job right now.
Yeah, nobody wants that job right now. Obviously, somebody or some people are running the day-to-day operations of Iran. But due to American and Israeli strikes, a lot of people who previously were the top tier, both in the religious community, in the political community, in the military community, they've been taken out, okay? These are the decapitation strikes. Wounds Are Us says, in light of the statement from Iran, notice Trump said he is speaking with the country of Iran, but he never said who he's talking to. And it's for that reason right there. It's because the person that, or the people or persons that he was speaking to likely were the ones that would be running the country or have been running the country or would be poised to take over the country and to turn it into a nation that would then join the new Trump international order that he's creating with the Board of Peace and the Golden Age, intercommunication, inter-economic cooperation. And by publishing that person's name in the Jerusalem Post, the Israelis have just put a target on that guy's back. I hope that everything is okay, and I hope that we can continue to move this along. Because ultimately, as it's been said numerous times, the military and political goals of the United States are not necessarily aligned 100% with the nation of Israel. Israel just wants Iran gone. They don't believe that anybody there is ever going to be willing to live in peace. They've already decided this, and so unfortunately, I believe this is an example of Israel putting their thumb on the scale and trying to make sure that the person who may be able to lead this country is unable to lead this country, which of course is going to lead to continued bombing and attacks and unfortunately lead us further from peace. Now, thank you so much, Wounds Are Us. Appreciate that. And also, thank you very much to Charlie Souls for the cookie. Thank you to Luann V for purchasing a 12-month silver tier subscription. Luann, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Sean Joe, thank you for the can. 123SKG, thank you for the can. Sean Joe, thank you for another can. And Red Gun 51, thank you for that can as well. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. All right. Now, before we continue, I have a very brief message from my friends over here on Rumble. You guys, here is just a very quick inside scoop that a lot of people making content over on Rumble are talking about. It's actually one of the reasons that I love using Rumble. They've made a way for you, the audience, to super chat creators so that we get paid immediately. And even better, there are no fees. You might know that YouTube and Twitch take up to 50% of your donation when you tip creators. This method takes none. That's right. The platform takes zero fees. I keep nearly 100% of what you send me, and your donation goes a lot further. Now, you can super chat using Bitcoin, Tether USD, or even Tether Gold stablecoins. And the tip is going to show up in the Rumble chat just like a regular rant. And then, of course, I'm going to go ahead and read what your message is on air. All you need to do is download the Rumble Wallet app on the App Store and then send tips to your favorite creators. When you log in, you will sign in with your Rumble account, and everybody you subscribe to will be showing right there. I think that they might actually show up in the order if people are live. You're going to see them right up top. But either way, you can find me on there pretty easily. You can also go directly to the website, wallet.rumble.com, or you can download the app directly from the App Store on your device. It's on Apple and on Android. Seriously, it's a pretty amazing way to get rid of the middleman and help the creator economy, make sure that I can continue to do the work here, bring you news and information on a daily basis. So a big shout out to Rumble for making this disruptive new technology. You can also use the QR code that you see on screen. Thank you very much. All right. Now, here, Wounds Are Us says, I am not anti-Israel, but I am starting to question Netanyahu and their media. No, I am anti-Zionist because the plan of the Zionist government of Israel is to disrupt our plans in the Middle East. They want all of this land. That's just the truth of it. And for them to get rid of Iran, to get rid of many of those other Muslim nations that we've made peace and security deals with, that's what they want to do. But that's not necessarily every single person in the nation of Israel. So To me, it's the Israeli deep state, just like we have the U.S. deep state here, just like we got the Iranian deep state over there. But yes, I think that Netanyahu may not be prime minister for a super long time. And I think that ultimately peace is better for everyone. The problem is that they are not necessarily interested in peace. They are interested in dominance, which is not a good thing. Everybody deserves their own autonomy. And President Trump right now is trying to bring peace to the Middle East. He's not trying to hold one nation above all others. And again, that is not what the current government of Israel wants. But even saying that, it doesn't mean that every single person who's in the Israeli government feels that way. Okay, now, very interesting interview that took place between the wife of Stephen Miller, Katie Miller, and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. She asked the question that everybody wants to ask. Why has the FBI not arrested the people that we believe to be traitors to the United States of America? The big names, Brennan, Comey, Clapper. I'll even throw Obama in there. That's a pretty obvious one. Now, she also asked him about the handling of the Epstein case. And, of course, people that we know are in those files and have likely been involved in blackmail operations. We're just going to hear this clip right here that she posted. Why hasn't the FBI arrested Clapper, Comey, or Brennan? And there's a lot more people there, too. The hoax of the Russia collusion hoax, the grand conspiracy to take down President Trump. Need I remind you, there's an ongoing criminal investigation. Grand juries are currently being convened in Fort Pierce, Florida. So pay attention to what Todd Blanche says. Oh, my God. I am sorry, guys. I am so sorry. Sorry, Cisco. Okay. Going to try this again, guys. Thank you.
Why haven't we arrested Clapper, Comey, Brennan? So many traitors to our country. Why haven't we done more to hold people accountable?
I think that well, first of all, I'm not going to talk about any ongoing investigations, and I can't, but I think the Attorney General and myself, Director Patel, are focused on nothing more than accountability.
These are people who waged witch hunts against President Trump for only political purposes. Yet, I'm sure they're all guilty of committing various crimes, which I know you can't comment on, so we'll give you a pass. But don't you agree that we should hold people accountable who do these types of things?
I think there's nothing more important in the Department of Justice than accountability. Yes, I agree with that.
All right. So first of all, there's no reason that Todd Blanche needed to do this interview. And his answer is a non-answer because it has to be. Because there is currently the grand jury, the grand conspiracy grand jury taking place in Florida right now. Now, if there was no accountability coming, if there was no investigation, he could have said, we've been unable to tie those people to any articulatable crimes. And that would have been it. Of course, people would not be happy, but it would be an honest answer. No, in fact, Todd Blanche gave us the information we need to know that accountability actually is coming. He can't talk about those things because those people are all currently under criminal investigation right now. So I have said this time and time again, simply because you have not seen people being arrested does not mean that they will not be arrested, that they will not be charged with crimes. You guys, Chi-Chi got up to go to the bathroom. I'm alone, so I need to play some music for you, and I will be right back. Where is the Hillary Clinton? We'll play this. Evil. we will be victorious. Oh, I love that song. That is such a great song. One of my favorites of all time. Anyways, yes, this is all falling into place, you guys. These investigations are probably some of the largest, most complicated. They span at least over the last 10 years. There is so much that is happening, and all you need to do is just sit back and watch it happen, because there's nothing else you can do. You know, over the weekend, I recorded with Gordon. Tonight, I will be on the Book of Trump with Gordon. And there's something I said there, something I've said to you guys on many occasions. The people who love drinking, they probably hate hearing me talk about being sober. But here's the thing. One of the things that I learned getting sober, and one of the things that I do, that I remind myself of on a daily basis, first of all, I have to remind myself that I'm not the center of the universe, and that I am not in control of 99% of what's going on around me. I can control one thing. That is my own actions and my reaction to the world. And I make a conscious decision to give my life over to God on a daily basis. Okay, God is in control. I am not in control. And I'll tell you what, my life has been measurably easier and more satisfying when I realized that and when I accepted it. And by making that conscious decision to give my will over to God every single day, I continue to enjoy life. I continue to have a much easier time moving through it. And in reminding myself that every single day, I remind myself that it's God's plan, it's not my plan. And I'll tell you what, that takes a tremendous burden off of me every single day. So maybe you guys, if you are having a difficult time, even if you do drink, if you just try to remind yourself of that every day, then it might be easier for you. Okay, now, I think that these things are truly happening, okay? And I have tremendous faith in God's ability to set this world right. Now, Dan Bongino, of course, having joined the FBI and not delivering on a lot of things that people were expecting him to deliver on, he takes a tremendous amount of flack on a daily basis. Over the weekend, he had a pretty heated interaction with someone. So this was between him and Joseph Philip Daniel. I'm not familiar with Mr. Daniel. I guess that he's a preacher. He's being a guest on the 700 Club on occasion, but he was there with Ivan Raiklin. And of course, Ivan is he's got a lot to say. And when he opens his mouth, he is somebody that definitely demands to be heard. Essentially, they accused Dan of being a pedophile protector. And I'm going to play this clip for you.
Dan, don't be a coward, Dan.
You're going to be trespassed from the property, okay? This might be, you might feel like you're in
God's watching you, man. We reap what we sow. God's watching us. Go all out against the deep state. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of Satan, man. I'm telling you.
You're a big shit.
I'm ready.
Why don't you do it?
I'm ready to be in Congress.
Why don't you put your name
I'm ready. I plan on it.
Go volunteer.
I'm not afraid of Hillary.
Volunteer.
I'm not. God bless you, man. I'm here in love, Dan. Seek the...
Man, you know, I just feel like these kinds of interactions are not healthy. I don't think Dan Bongino is a pedophile protector. I think that undoubtedly Dan Bongino's experience in the FBI is something that none of us can truly understand. But I do believe that Dan Bongino is a patriot. Okay, I think that he probably did what he could in the FBI. And there's a possibility that, you know, maybe he left. Maybe he wanted to, because he wanted to spend more time with his family, or maybe it's because he didn't feel that he was going to be as effective as he wanted to be. Or maybe he was far more effective than we know yet. because all of his activities in the FBI have not yet been revealed. Now, right here, Ivan says, notice I was polite to Dan. He's a non-combat veteran similar to Fanone, Levin, Shapiro. Loomer has no interest in explaining why he and his affiliates are so virulently anti-combat veteran. I don't know that to be the case, Ivan. Those who sacrifice most for America. Notice who they attack online. Notice who they attack online. Oh God, how did I miss this? Notice who they attack online, and when politely extending an offer to converse on substance, denies the opportunity and chooses to instead resort to ad hominem name calling online. I will continue to try to motivate Dan and his crew to convert to America first from America second. I pray others join me. Now, I don't know what was said between Dan and Ivan. It's obvious that by the time Dan and Ivan got together, Dan was already riled up because of that reaction, or that interaction that he had with this other guy, Joshua. Is that his name? Joshua Philip Daniel. So I don't know. Maybe by the time that Dan and Ivan had their reaction to each other, it was already sour in Dan's mind. But I feel like this definitely doesn't do anything to move the conversation forward, because Dan has done a lot. So anyways, I think that people I think people need to check themselves. Really. I feel like in this social media obsessed landscape, people default to bad behavior, and I don't really vibe with it, to be perfectly honest with you. All right. Now, thank you so much to Sir Lurks a lot for the shades. Thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie. Thank you to Red Gun for the can. I appreciate that. All right. Now, we have a couple of different stories related to election security. First of all, I mentioned the Supreme Court of the United States. Well, there's also a mail-in ballot case in federal court, and that's being brought by Tom Fitton and the people at Judicial Watch. They filed a lawsuit against California, specifically to stop them from counting mail-in ballots that are received after Election Day. Now, that was going on today. Now, we actually have a video of Tom Fitton explaining the case, so let's go ahead and hear from him first of all. This is from earlier this morning.
Hey everyone, Judicial Watch just filed a major new federal lawsuit in California to stop that state's counting of ballots that are received up to 7 days after Election Day. We filed the lawsuit on behalf of Congressman Darrell Issa, who's from California. Federal law sets an election day, not an election week, not an election month. In fact, an appellate court in another Judicial Watch lawsuit ruled that counting ballots received after Election Day violates federal law. It undermines election integrity, undermines confidence in the people, in the fair administration of the elections, and of course, violates federal law.
Which it does. Of course, it violates federal law. So, this case in California will hopefully have some bearing on what happens in the future. But I'll tell you what definitely will, which is the argument for the case taking place today before the U.S. Supreme Court. So, oral arguments were held earlier today for about 2 hours. At the heart of the Supreme Court's case is a dispute in Watson versus the RNC. This is a case challenging the counting of ballots after Election Day in Mississippi. So in Mississippi, slightly different from the universal mail-in ballots they have in California, their law allows for the counting of absentee ballots that have been received up to 5 business days after Election Day, as long as those ballots are postmarked on or before Election Day. Now, in Mississippi, the law requires voters to submit their ballots by Election Day, but then it allows election officials to receive and then count those ballots within that limited time frame. Now, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled that the federal law mandates something much stricter than what they do in Mississippi or what they do in California. Ballots must be both cast and received by Election Day, which effectively would invalidate the statute that's on the books in Mississippi. So this is what triggered the Supreme Court showdown and the arguments that were heard earlier today. I've got a couple of clips from those oral arguments. Now, Mississippi officials argue that the appeals court got it wrong, both legally and historically. According to the state's petition, federal statutes establish a uniform election day, but do not dictate ballot receipt deadlines. Of course, you know how I feel about it. How can we have an election day that goes on for 5 days or more after that election day? The state makes the following argument. An election occurs when voters mark their choice by casting ballots. Ballot receipt and counting are administrative steps, not part of the election itself. And I think that's a bit of a stretch. Many states have long accepted ballots arriving after Election Day without issue. Now, that doesn't, just because there hasn't been a challenge to that yet, doesn't mean there isn't an issue. We have seen time and time again, over and over again, how the receipt of ballots after Election Day draws out Election Day into election week, election weeks, election months. Mississippi warns that the lower court's ruling could cause destabilizing nationwide ramifications if allowed to stand. Well, certainly it would cause ramifications nationwide for the counting of ballots after Election Day, but that primarily is the problem that many of us have with this practice. We would love to see elections be done on a single day. That way we know who won the election on the day of the election. It's been reported widely that the expansion of mail-in voting, primarily during the COVID-19 pandemic era, created a system of confusion, different rules in different states and different lengths of time and different manners in which the ballots can be or must be sent in, or how they're going to be accepted and who actually even counts these ballots. The critics of this system, and many of us here in this audience, would suggest that it was created expressly for the purposes of manipulation of the election system. So now, thank God, the Supreme Court is finally in a position to draw a line. We've got about 30 states and Washington, D.C. that currently allow some form of post-election day ballot receipt, provided that ballots are mailed on time. If the Supreme Court upholds the Fifth Circuit's decision, all of these laws could be struck down. States may then be forced to overhaul election systems quickly, and future elections could face legal chaos and last-minute litigation. We know undoubtedly that chaos and litigation are going to happen in one form or another. There is simply no terms under which the United States operates where people don't use and abuse our election system. It happens every single time. And right now, the deep state, the other side, they have the money and the resources and a whole team of legal defenders ready to bring these challenges to bear. So from SCOTUS blog, the Supreme Court will kick off its March argument session by hearing a case that could have major implications for the 2026 elections and beyond. In Watson versus Republican National Committee, the justices will decide whether federal law requires not only that voters cast their ballots by Election Day, but also that the election officials receive the ballots by then. If the justices agree that it does, laws in more than a dozen states could be upended. The Constitution provides that the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But the Congress may at any time make by law or any such alterations of regulations. In 1845, Congress, which has the power to determine when the president is elected, chose the Tuesday after the first Monday in November as Election Day. And in 1872, it directed the congressional elections should occur on this day as well. In 2020, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Mississippi changed its election laws to allow mail-in ballots to be counted as long as they were postmarked by and then received within 5 business days of Election Day. In 2024, the Republican National Committee and the Mississippi Republican Party, along with the Mississippi voter and a county election official, went to federal court to challenge the post-election ballot deadline. The Libertarian Party of Mississippi filed a similar lawsuit a few days later, which was combined with the first suit, and the challengers contend that the Mississippi law conflicted with federal law setting the Tuesday after the first Monday in November as the election day. Senior U.S. District Judge Louis Garola Jr. upheld the law. He wrote that Congress set a national election day to avoid the evils of burdening citizens with multiple election days and of risking undue influence upon voters in one state from the announced tallies in states voting early. Neither of those concerns is raised by allowing a reasonable interval for ballots cast and postmarked by Election Day to arrive by mail. Now, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit reversed that decision by Judge Garola. A three-judge panel made up of Judges James Ho, Kyle Duncan, and Andrew Oldham ruled that federal law requires all ballots be received by Election Day. Over a dissent by 5 judges, the full Court of Appeals turned down Mississippi's plea to rehear the case, and the Supreme Court agreed in November to weigh in. In its brief on the merits, Mississippi argued that for purposes of the federal law, an election occurs when voters cast their ballots and chose the candidate that they want to serve in office, and an election does not hinge on when election officials receive those ballots, just as it does not depend on when election officials count the ballots. The Supreme Court's 2020 ruling in RNC versus DNC, Mississippi wrote, reinforces that ballot receipt is not part of an election. Are you kidding me on that? I just feel like that is such a crazy stance to take. In its ruling on the interim docket, Mississippi said the court blocked a lower court order that would have allowed ballots to be mailed after Wisconsin's primary election day. And in so doing, Mississippi emphasized the court distinguished between the date by which ballots must be received by election officials and the date by which they must be cast by voters, thereby acknowledging that the latter is fundamental to voting and thus to the election itself, while the former is not. Now, one of those people who actually argued on behalf of the idea of an election day was Hermie Dillon from the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. She and her team filed a brief on this, and they were able to present it today. Now, she makes a couple of comments here about the importance of deciding this in the Supreme Court so that we can have an election day as our forefathers intended. Election days, election weeks, election month, it makes absolutely no sense. It's ripe for opportunity for fraud and mismanagement, and we see it time and time again. Every single time there is an election that extends beyond it, well, all of a sudden, ballots appear from the middle of nowhere. Go back to the TCF Center on election night in Detroit, and there was a mass injection of these ballots, probably the same in Arizona, same in Georgia, same in Pennsylvania, time and time again. Election season, Patrick, that's right. It's not election day, it's the election season. We should make T-shirts.
Is it legal for states to continue to allow ballots to trickle in after the official federal election day in November and count them? Or is that inconsistent with our federal election statutes? That's the question that the United States Supreme Court confronted today in a very interesting, more than 2 hours oral argument that I had the privilege of witnessing. We at the Civil Rights Division, where we're charged with enforcing our federal election laws, had the privilege of co-authoring a brief with our Solicitor General, who then argued it in court today, together with 2 of the other top oral advocates in the country, including former Solicitor General Paul Clement, who argued for the Republican National Committee to uphold the lower court ruling from the Fifth Circuit that indeed the practice of Mississippi, and by the way, parenthetically, many other states, of allowing ballots to trickle in and be counted days and sometimes even up to 3 weeks after an election is inconsistent with our federal election statute. So, in prior cases, the United States Supreme Court has addressed these types of issues, and Justice Kavanaugh wrote in a case in 2020 that these kinds of disparate trickling in and uncertainty and a wide swath of different kinds of laws creates uncertainty around elections and indeed undermines confidence in our elections. So we argued in our brief that because Congress has these laws that refer to an election day should mean election day, meaning the last day by which ballots can be received by the state and processed. And so here, Mississippi allows it for 5 days. Some states allow it for 10 days, up to 21 days. 8 states don't even require a postmark on mail ballots. So for those of you who are concerned about whether this would impact our military abroad being able to cast their ballots, it doesn't, because there's a special statute for that under federal law, so there's no preemption issue. And so here I saw a very spirited argument. All of the 9 justices asked questions. I think there was a distinct trend in how some of these justices were viewing this. And this isn't Mississippi's first trip to the Supreme Court. There was a case called Foster versus Love in 1997, where it was kind of looking at the opposite end of the spectrum. Mississippi had a open primary law that said that at the primary level, if any particular candidate, even a federal election, got a majority of the votes, that was the end. There was no need for a general election. And the Supreme Court held that this violated the very statutes that we're looking at here about a federal general election day. And so it's going to be interesting to see the court reconcile that prior decision, some other decisions by the court, and look at the legislative history. And so I'm really excited to see this case come out. And if it comes out the way that the United States is arguing at the Civil Rights Division and Solicitor General's office, i.e., that it is inconsistent with federal law for states to continue to process and accept these ballots after the election day being the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, set by federal law way back in the mid-1800s, I think that's actually going to be a positive development for voter confidence in the outcome of our elections, regardless of your party, because we're going to know that final means final, and there aren't some shenanigans with a bunch of people, your neighbor or whoever, delivering a dump of ballots into the mail after the election day. So stay tuned for further developments in this case.
All right. I, too, am very excited about this. I think Harmeet Dillon is so intelligent. I feel like her legal arguments are on point every single time. She and the team that she has assembled at the Civil Rights Division are doing incredible work to try to secure our system and ensure that it remains that way into the future. You know, a lot of people just say, oh, you know, just have Congress pass a law, just have President Trump pass a presidential executive order. But you see, those things could be overruled. In this respect, the Supreme Court is the supreme law of the land. Their job is not to create law. Their job is to interpret law as it is already written and give us a template by which it must be followed going forward. The template is already there. Election day is election day. We've already got this on the books. It just needs to be enforced. You know, many of the changes that were made to various states' elections during the pandemic were not even done through the state legislature. They were done by decree, by bureaucrats, elected and unelected. So this will put it to rest ultimately at the end of the day. Now, we do have a clip here from Justice Alito, which kind of tells us where the justices are going in terms of the way they lean on this case right here. Now, of course, this is just the opinion of one justice, but Justice Alito, I feel, is representative of the conservative majority. Let's go ahead and take a listen. And one moment, I'll just need to get past this commercial real quickly. Okay, let me pause. Let me make sure this is turned up all the way.
We have lots of phrases that involve 2 words, the second of which is day. Labor Day, Memorial Day, George Washington's birthday, Independence Day, birthday, and election day. And they're all particular days. So if we start with that, if I have nothing more to look at than the phrase election day, I think this is the day in which everything is going to take place, or almost everything. And then we have 3 points in time, 1844, 1872, 1914. And we can ask, what would people have thought on those days is meant by this phrase, election day? Which of those should we choose? Which of those dates should we choose?
Well, I think you could choose any of the 3. I mean, honestly, I think the single best one, if you're just going to choose one, is 1872. And the reason I say that is because 1914 is the latest in time, but that's the one that Congress gave the least thought to.
All right, so Election Day is exactly as it sounds. Your birthday is the day on which you were born. You don't celebrate your birthday on the day of, the day before, the following 5 to 10 days after. Same with Labor Day. It's a holiday. It's one day. Election Day is exactly the same thing. But they have expanded the definition through the creative use of language. And this is why language is so important. It's why defining the words as we mean them is so important, especially when it comes to legal matters such as this. Now, Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett, meanwhile, each asked questions indicating that they were concerned about how a decision invalidating the deadlines for late arriving ballots could affect other election rules, including those allowed for early voting. I'll tell you what, if people are worried about their ballots arriving late, then get your ballot to the local election office early. There's a difference between an absentee ballot, okay, and a mass mail-in ballot. If you can't get your ballot to the polling place in time for it to be counted on Election Day, then perhaps you don't deserve to have your ballot counted. In the same way that if you know you are meant to vote on a one particular day for a very important election and you can't make it to your polling place, then I'm sorry, you don't get to vote. It's just like renewing the tabs on your car. How many people have their birthday every single year and know the exact date that they're going to need to get their tabs their tabs renewed? And if they don't do it on their birthday, well, then those tabs expire and they run the risk of getting pulled over. But if they don't want to get pulled over, they make sure to get to the Secretary of State or the DMV either on their birthday or before their birthday and renew their tags, and then they don't have to worry about anything. If you know that your credit card bill is due on a certain day and you don't want to have to pay some late fee, well, then you're going to make sure that your credit card bill is paid on the day that it's due. If you know that you don't pay your power bill or your water bill on the day that it's due, and if you don't, then your water or your power is going to get shut off, then you're going to pay it on time. If you want to make sure that your ballot is counted on Election Day, then by Jove, you're going to make sure that you show up at the polls, and you're going to make sure that you do it on the day that the election takes place. The RNC and Trump administration have argued that under the federal election statutes setting a uniform day for the elections for president and Congress, Election Day is the day the ballot box closes. That is the most important thing that I can imagine. Now, likely we will get a ruling on this by June. And so we are waiting with bated breath. Now, you might have to ask yourself, I wonder what the other side is saying. I wonder what the liberal justices are saying. Well, I've got a treat for you. Justice Sonia Sotomayor thinks that she's got a real zinger, and she asks a GOP lawyer, maybe we should have another president now, because Florida's military ballots came after Election Day in the 2000 Bush v. Gore fight. Well, let's go ahead and listen to her justification and rationalization.
You believe that absentee voting by the military and overseas voters, the various laws, that federal laws under which states have proceeded with respect to those votes are illegal?
Okay. First of all, she is a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. The laws that govern ballots that are being sent in by military and overseas military families, those are completely different from mass mail-in ballots or even regular absentee voting here in the United States. It is a completely different set of rules, and it will not be governed by any decision being made in this case right here. This woman is stupid. There is no other way to put it. I don't know how she is currently sitting on the Supreme Court of the United States.
No, or they're not saying what everybody has understood them to say, that states can accept absentee ballots after the election? So military and overseas ballots?
I don't think any vote is unlawful. Let me try to address how I think you would reconcile UACAVA with the Election Day statutes. And to start, I think it's important to recognize that UACAVA is not limited to the federal general election. So UACAVA applies to primary elections, to runoff elections, and special elections, and federal general elections. The Election Day statutes only apply to the general federal election. So the way I would reconcile the two is to say that all the references in UACAVA to state deadlines are perfectly fine, not preempted at all, not displaced at all, not even anomalous. With respect to the primaries, the runoffs, and the special elections. Then the court has a job to do in the federal general election as to say, like, kind of which is the specific, which is the general. I think the more logical way to do it would be to say that with the understanding in this court, if you decide in our favor, that for the federal general election, the ballots have to be in by Election Day, I would say—
Maybe we should have another president now, because wasn't it in Florida that they were counting military votes after receipt?
So
what? In 2000? She's talking about hanging chads in 2000. She's talking about the overseas ballots. Whoever would have been president at that time would be a totally different idea, different concept, because presidents only have 2 terms. They go for 2 terms, 8 years. It's, oh my God, it's just like the retardation of this woman.
With all due respect, that is the reddest of red herrings, because what happened in the 2000
Gotcha, bitch.
election in Florida is that pursuant to a consent decree that was entered by a federal court because Florida was violating the principal provision of UACAVA, which says you have to give the absentee ballots to the overseas voters 45 days in advance. Because Florida was violating that, there had to be a consent decree to create a remedy that was not provided
There, what happened was that the judge made up the deadline, not the state.
Either way, red herring, she ought to know because she is a Supreme Court justice, but obviously she's not particularly intelligent. All right, now, this is a longer clip. We're going to hear a grilling from Justice Gorsuch, and he is speaking with the Solicitor General of Mississippi. So this is the guy arguing in favor of the extended voting days rather than voting day as written in the federal statute.
Problem. And before brief, you say that the federal statute does require voters to submit their ballots to election officials on Election Day, must be cast by Election Day, and that the Election Day is the day to conclude and consummate the election through a final selection. You agree with all those statements in your brief?
Yes.
Okay. But at the same time, you say, actually, it doesn't have to be submitted to an election official. It just has to be submitted to a common carrier. And there's a contradiction there that I just want you to first address, and then I'll give you my hypothetical.
Very good, Your Honor. I think when you put something in the mail, you're not, I think.
That's not an election official. FedEx isn't an election official.
Right, but the recipient certainly is the person who you're submitting it in the mail to. I mean, that is the recipient. Of course. And, right, Your Honor. And I think
you submit it to FedEx and they deliver it to the election official. But you say it has to be submitted to an election official throughout your brief, but then you say a common carrier is okay. And those two things don't add up.
Well, I think the difference is, say, sending it to your brother versus sending it to the registrar.
Well, we already dealt with that. The brother turns out to be okay, so long as the state says so.
I think that's okay on their view, Your Honor. I'm a little more guarded on that.
I think you already answered that one. So here's the hypo. Let's say you have a state where a large portion of the electorate mails in their ballots on or close to Election Day. Not far-fetched. Many states are like that. Then, the day after the election, a story breaks that one of the lead candidates engaged in an inappropriate sexual escapade, or perhaps is concluding with a foreign power. Again, not far-fetched, I think. And the competing candidate immediately goes on the airwaves and urges voters to recall their ballots and to tell the common carriers not to deliver them. And many common carriers will do that with anything that you send through them. FedEx, you just call them up and say, I want it back. In that hypothetical, did the election happen on Election Day? Oh, by the way, it swings the election.
So the election did happen on Election Day, Justice Gorsuch. As we've explained, our ballot does not allow using mail recall, anything like that. When somebody submits their ballot by mail.
Just first deal with my hypothetical, and then I'll deal with your statute.
Okay. The election happened on Election Day.
Even though it changes the outcome.
I mean, I think.
Yes, it has to be your answer, doesn't it?
He's tearing this dude's argument apart. I really like Gorsuch. Like, he is a brilliant litigator. When he gets up there and he is questioning the people coming to make arguments before him, when he does, even when he agrees, he tries to get them into these sort of impossible mental programs. He's very intelligent.
I mean, yes, Your Honor. I want to be clear about the.
All right.
We are not agreeing that the outcome can be properly changed in that circumstance.
Well, hold on. It did in my hypothetical. You can't change my hypothetical, counsel.
And I'm just saying it's unlawful, Your Honor. I don't mean to disparage your hypothetical. I'm just saying that it's an unlawful circumstance because we don't allow ballot.
Oh, in Mississippi. Okay, but that hypothetical could happen in another state, right?
I think if the state is not providing that on mailing there's a final choice made, I think that would be a problem with that law under the federal statutes.
Now, you say your statute.
Except there are states that do that. Okay, this definitely happens.
You're different. You admit my hypothetical could happen, but you say it can't happen in Mississippi because recall's not allowed. I couldn't find that anywhere in Mississippi law.
He looked. He looked ahead of time. Yes, he trapped him. He absolutely trapped him.
In fact, what I did see was a statute that says that that the Secretary of State can promulgate rules and regulations. That's 23-15-637-3. And then I went and looked at the regulations. And Rule 2.1 says that an absentee ballot is the final vote of a voter when the ballot is marked accepted. That doesn't preclude recall. In fact, that allows recall.
I respectfully don't agree with that, Your Honor. I mean,
where does it say recall's not permitted? I couldn't find that anywhere in your statutes or the rule.
And I think.
Well, Linda, here's the thing. It wasn't really a hypothetical. It was a factual possibility. And the Solicitor General showed that he was not competently read into the actual laws of the state that he is arguing for. And Judge Gorsuch actually was, because undoubtedly in the statute that Mississippi has on the books, it says that that vote is not considered to be accepted until it's actually in the hands of the election official and it's stamped. So as it's going through that third-party carrier, that very realistic hypothetical is something that could happen and that undoubtedly has happened, because something like what Gorsuch had suggested has absolutely taken place. Think about how the mainstream media puts their thumbs on the scale. If they know that a candidate is going to be, overwhelmingly winning, they come out with a negative story. Well, they can influence the outcome of the election. And knowing how many people are voting by absentee or mail-in ballots, universal mail-in ballots in all these states, this is very, very realistic. But Gorsuch is brilliant.
By providing that ballots are final when cast under our statute.
No, it doesn't. It says they're final when marked accepted.
That's the regulation, Your Honor.
Yeah.
And the regulation is the law. That's how we do it around here. The law is the law. That's how these things are decided. Siesta Randy, thank you very much for the tip via Rumble Wallet. Appreciate you, homie.
And
it's your regulation. And it allows recall.
It does. Respectfully, it does not allow recall, Your Honor.
Show me where. Would you read to me the provision that precludes it?
It's subsection 3 of the statute that my friends have found.
I read you said subsection 3 that says that Secretary of State can make rules, and then I read you the rule.
To ensure that the ballots are final when cast. The key thing is ballots are final when cast.
It says votes promulgated by an absentee ballot, that the absentee ballot person's absentee vote is final. You can make rules about when they're final. And what the rule says is it is final when marked accepted.
And that's, it's speaking to a processing rule about what to do when somebody's ballot potentially doesn't arrive on time, they submit an affidavit ballot. But I would come back to the text of the statute, Your Honor. Final when cast is what our law.
Mr. Stewart, I just.
Mr. Stewart. That's Amy Coney Barrett right there. I don't like her voice. I'll be really honest with you. Okay. G. Fontez says any decent attorney or judge should only ask a question they know the answer to, whether that's what the individual being questioned might say, unless desperate or ordered by their client. Yes, you would think that somebody like the Solicitor General of Mississippi coming to defend the position that they have would be read in on everything, and he would know what he's talking about. But the problem is he obviously doesn't. All right, guys, before we continue, I have a very brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, if you still haven't tried 1775 coffee, I'm going to give you another opportunity to do so. It is wonderful coffee, very high quality. They have some of those starter kits available. In those starter kits, you're going to get their bold dark roast. It hits nice and hard, very robust. Their smooth medium roast, it goes down a treat, and their Vitality Mushroom coffee gives you clean energy and laser focus without the crash of a typical coffee. Again, it is made from single origin, small batch, toxin, and mold-free beans, the highest quality you can get. You're also going to get a couple of free goodies, their gold spoon clip, a frother that is very strong, and a black 1775 tumbler that's going to keep everything nice and toasty. It's $170 worth of coffee and gear, and it's all yours for $99. This is for the people who've watched 1775 blow up on Rumble and wonder if it's actually worth it. It truly is. And to find out for yourself, you got to go to 1775coffee.com/studio. You can go there and grab one of their starter kits before they're gone and get yourself a package of bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. Also, right there, use that QR code on screen. Thank you so much to Rumble and 1775 Coffee. Okay, now, continuing, we also have a bit of a scandal erupting down in Georgia. Oh, and I should just say again, I believe that the Supreme Court is going to find in favor of an election day. Not only must ballots be postmarked on election day, they must be received by election day, or they are not going to count. And if that's too much of a burden, then I think people need to reevaluate their lives. If you care about having your vote counted, and you know that you have to mail your ballot in for whatever reason because it's absentee or you're going to be out of state, why don't you go down ahead of time and just hand it in to your local clerk, make sure that your ballot is received, make sure that it's counted, and then you'll be able to ensure that your vote is cast in the way that you intend. If you send your ballot via the Postal Service or UPS or FedEx, you have no guarantee that it's going to arrive in the first place. And as we have seen in years past, there can be unforeseen delays. There can be things that preclude that ballot's ability to show up in the hands of the people who are going to count it. If you cannot guarantee that you'll be there on election day, then maybe it's not your time to vote for whatever reason. So make the time. Everybody allows you to make the time. Your employer will allow you to vote. I personally think that election day should be a national holiday. There's no need to have more than one day that we're out there voting. If everybody goes and votes on the same day, you have polling places which are specific to the area in which you live. None of these mass polling places like they got in Arizona. It's a total cluster every single time. In Georgia is where we're going to stop for our next story related to election security. There was a hearing on March 17th, just this year, in the Georgia State Legislature. There was a 40-year-old IT professional. He showed up to testify. This is during public comment. He offered to show the committee evidence of vulnerabilities in the election software that they're using in Georgia. That man's name is Mark Cook. Mark Cook, we just actually spoke about a few minutes ago with my good friend James Wiley, and he also testified as an expert witness in Tina Peters' trial back in 2024. He used his time during the public comments to offer evidence to the Georgia House of Governmental Affairs Committee as they were considering a Georgia election bill. The online recording of the hearing that includes public comment contains the following testimony from Mr. Cook. I have evidence right here that I was hoping to show you that can show that there are absolutely, and I know you guys have heard this, but I've got the proof right here, backdoors built into electronic voting systems that allow flipping and changing of votes. The testing labs all miss this. They are all blindly certified. Then we're told that everything is safe and secure, and it's absolutely not. Mysteriously, according to the timestamps shown in the top right corner, Cook's public comment at one point goes from 102:18 to 102:29 instantly, which means that a cut of approximately 11 seconds in Mark Cook's testimony seems to have been made to his public comment. Now, fortunately, Cook's public comment was also recorded, and the following statement is what was removed from Mark Cook's public comment. I believe we have a video of it right here. We're going to watch and we're going to see his testimony as it was recorded in full.
Mr. Cook, I recognize you.
I appreciate it. My name is Mark Cook. I'm an election cybersecurity subject matter expert in threat assessment and common sense mitigation. I've been working on elections solid nonstop for about 6 years now.
Oh, he's an Irish boy. That might be one of the reasons why he's supporting our boy James.
I have been working in the IT industry for 40 years. I have intrinsic knowledge that would be really important for people to understand. I have evidence right here that I was hoping to show you that can show there are absolute...
Cyrus, we are against absentee and mail-in ballots. Where are you getting that anybody is in favor of that? Absentee voting is something entirely different from mail-in ballots. Open absentee voting is what I am against. Under very limited circumstances, absentee voting is something that I think should be available, but under, again, very strict constraints. Mass mail-in balloting is what we are attempting to get rid of. And when I'm saying that if you can't get your ballot postmarked, if you have to send it by mail in time to be there on election day, then it shouldn't be counted. That goes for people who, have a valid reason to be an absentee voter.
Absolutely. I know you guys have heard this, but I've got the proof right here. Backdoors built in to electronic voting systems that allow flipping, changing of votes. So the testing lab.
Aha! Did you see it?
Proof right here. Backdoors built in to electronic voting systems that allow flipping, changing of votes. So the testing labs.
Wow. I can't believe they did that. Did you hear that? Watch it again and pay attention to the time in the upper right corner.
That allow flipping, changing of votes. So the testing labs.
Can you believe that? So much for government transparency, I guess. Well, how about we just put that audio right back where they clipped it out so everyone can hear it. Enjoy.
That allow flipping, changing of votes, infiltrating the system, all built in, set up in a way that makes it easy and untraceable. I can demonstrate this to you even while I'm still here in this building. I'm happy to do so. The testing labs all miss this. Then they're blindly certified, and then we're told, it's shoved down our throats that everything is safe and secure. It's absolutely not. We're being lied to from the very top. The whole thing is built on a pyramid of lies, and we have to stop living these lies. I will educate you. I can show you guys the problems. No issue. I'm happy to do so. But we have to approach this in a common sense form here. We have to be smart about what we're doing. If we're going to make a change, we need to make a change that's actually going to solve the problem and not kick the can down the road. And again, take the control of elections away from where elections belong, which is in the people's hands. And this is not complicated to solve. We're literally filling dots out on paper. We're counting the dots, adding the dots up, and whoever has the most dots wins. That's the entire scope of our elections. So having to use computerized systems to count dots and add the dots up is the most ridiculous waste of money and theft of the very essence of us being American citizens and having a voice that I've ever seen in my life. So thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mr. Cook. And if I may, the members of the committee, I'd recommend that maybe if you could send it out, whatever evidence that you have.
I'm happy to. And I'm here for today and tomorrow. I'm happy to sit down with anyone and show you firsthand so you can see with your own eyes.
Wonderful. Thank you,
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Infiltrating the system, all built in set up in a way that makes it easy and untraceable. I can demonstrate this to you even while I'm still here in this building. I'm happy to do so. Infiltrating the system.
That was my question. Who ordered the cut? Was it someone on the committee? Was it the media person for the legislature? Was it some rogue actor who came in afterwards and thought, you know what, hardly anybody even watches this public comment bullshit anyway, so we'll just cut it and we'll see if anybody notices. And if they notice, then we just won't comment on it. But this is the most important question. Who ordered the cut?
System, all built in, set up in a way that makes it easy and untraceable. I can demonstrate this to you even while I'm still here in this building. I'm happy to do so.
So, citizens, what do we do now? The powers that be, the government, the corporations, decided they wanted to take over our elections so they could have control over all of us. Yeah, Democrats and Republicans.
Both.
We, the people, though, are the ones getting screwed while they play their little games and have us fighting with each other. So when are we done? I'd say it's getting pretty close. And to our legislators, our sheriffs, commissioners, election officials, please do the right thing. Now is the time to be courageous. Now is the time to return elections to where they rightfully belong. The citizens of the United States of America. Be bold, be courageous. The people will be with you. Please don't waste another minute. The natives are getting restless.
Say that again. So here's the problem, is that unfortunately, the people who would go about doing that are oftentimes the people who are benefiting from these overly complicated and convoluted systems that have these backdoors built in. Now, this isn't a new discovery. In Georgia, it was discovered that the encryption keys were displayed in plain text in the software. Phil Davis is another IT expert. He previously testified before the Georgia State Election Board to this fact. He discovered the password was in an open records request written in plain text, so anybody could gain access to it. Now, this was mentioned while reporting on the voluntary seizure of Dominion voting machines in Puerto Rico by our DNI following critical issues in the June 2024 primary election. As an example, Dominion voting systems were found to have their login passwords hard-coded in plain text in the software. Georgians made T-shirts with the password, which was DVS Corp 08 exclamation point. The user login was S-admin. That was also available. It was initially uncovered by cyber ninjas during their Maricopa County audit in 2021 and was also later discovered in 4 Georgia counties and 2 other states by Phil Davis. In 2007, the California Secretary of State withdrew approval of Sequoia voting systems for the exact same issue. This has been going on for nearly 20 years. Hard-coded passwords in plain text within the software. You can see here from the order in California. Funny that California was on the vanguard of election security. Whereas the Sequoia source code review team found that the Sequoia system's cryptography used to protect the integrity of precinct results can be easily circumnavigated and appears to be identical to cryptography key material in all Sequoia hardware, meaning an individual who gains temporary unauthorized access to one county's Sequoia voting system has effectively gained access to all Sequoia voting systems used in other counties, provided that person can gain physical access to those systems. And whereas the Sequoia source code review team found that the Sequoia's access controls and other computer security measures that are supposed to protect against unauthorized use of the Sequoia voting system, central vote counting computers, and polling place equipment are easily circumvented, and whereas the Sequoia source code review team found that the Sequoia voting system software suffers from numerous programming errors which have the potential to introduce or exacerbate security weaknesses. This is the same underpinnings for what we have currently in Dominion voting systems. Now, of course, they keep telling us that our elections are safe and secure. Only now we have a different government. Only now we have a director of national intelligence who is actively investigating this very issue right now. And I think that we are going to have a very different landscape. Even though the midterms are right around the corner, I believe that we are going to have a very, very different process in place by the time we get there. So, if you live in Georgia, reach out to the state legislature. Reach out to this particular committee and ask them what happened to that 10, 11 seconds of testimony that was deleted from the public comment. Ask them if anybody has actually sat down with Mark Cook. Has this information been passed on? Did they simply receive a copy of it and then tell one of their interns to take a look? Or did they take it seriously? Did they invite Mark in and ask him to demonstrate just how simple and easy it is to hack into our electronic voting systems? Because that's what's going on. This is not a new issue. This is already being demonstrated in a number of different ways. And you can go all the way back to California banning Sequoia voting systems in 2007. My goodness. eGrab4 says, Amen, Zach, you identified what is the key to living with sobriety. Approaching 10 years of sobriety this summer myself. Keep up the great work. Thank you for that so much, eGrab. Yes, I just hit 8 years in January of this year, and my life during those 8 years has been infinitely better than the life that preceded my time in sobriety. All right, now we're also going to talk about Maricopa County. I thought it was only appropriate. You guys remember former Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer? Well, Stephen Richer is currently under investigation for obstruction. Arizona lawmakers revealed during a committee hearing that Maricopa County's former recorder Stephen Richer is currently being investigated for obstruction. Stephen Richer, who is no longer in government. Stephen Richer, who's been involved with a political action committee designed to stop President Trump from becoming president again and being successful while he's in office for the second time. Of course, third time he was elected. Stephen Richer, who keeps piping up on social media and telling everybody fallacious information about the security of election systems. This investigation into Richer was disclosed last week during the House Federalism, Military Affairs, and Election Committee hearing. Now, the committee discussed an investigation by the Office of State Representative John Gillette. He is a Republican for Legislative District 30. He's the chair of the committee into Arizona's voter registrations. Now, the findings of that investigation were packaged as part of a criminal referral to the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Remember, Tulsi Gabbard was part of these investigations into election security. As part of his layout of the criminal referral packet, Gillette touched on an action by Richer in which the former recorder, while president of the Arizona Association of County Recorders in 2023, advised other county recorders to not comply with a records request from Arizona lawmakers concerning the 2022 election. Stephen Richer telling recorders not to comply with the legislative public records request? That's not a glitch. That's on purpose, said Gillette. State Representative Rachel Keschel of LD 17, vice chair of the committee, asked Gillette whether Richer reaching out at all to the county recorders qualified as obstruction. Keschel characterized Richer's recent public engagements as a CYA campaign, a cover your ass campaign. I can see that being the case. Is there something there that he broke the law by telling other recorders to basically obstruct on that point? Is anything being looked into on that front? Asked Rachel Keschel. Gillette disclosed that he discussed Richer's actions with former DHS Secretary Kristi Noem and her assistant, and that Richer was being investigated for that communication with other recorders. There appears to be some obstruction or intent to obstruct other recorders from doing their job because they have an association. He was president of the association at that time, but he was instructing other elected officials that are not of Maricopa County how to comply or not comply in this case with a lawful public records request from the House. That is being looked at, and thus we've had a subpoena issued since. That's right. They have subpoenaed them to present evidence as to Stephen Richer's obstruction. This is not just some going nowhere investigation. Now, Richer commented on a video posted of the exchange with an LOL on X, and he later deleted it, probably at the insistence of his attorneys. Now, earlier this month, of course, federal investigators seized election-related records from Maricopa County as part of their investigation into the 2020 presidential election. In response to that investigation, Richer wrote in a Dispatch op-ed defending the official outcome of the 2020 election. Richer characterized Arizona Republicans as being maniacally obsessed with theories of a stolen election and questioning the necessity of continuing scrutiny over Arizona elections. The years of investigation, tests, reviews, and audits are also worth revisiting because any future allegations would have to account for why all the previous probes didn't uncover any material fraud or error, wrote Richer. I would politely suggest that the reason is because no such fraud or error exists. The voters of Arizona chose Joe Biden more than 5.5 years ago. It's time to move on. Stephen Richer, we're not trying to negate the results of the 2020 election. We're not trying to have Donald Trump declared the winner. Joe Biden was already anointed, and his time has come and gone. And during Joe Biden's 4 years in office, President Trump was more of a president than Joe Biden ever was. President Trump was the shadow president of the United States. President Trump, despite all of the efforts to destroy him and to stop him from returning, was elected successfully a third time. And now he's back in Washington, D.C., and he's assembled a dream team to take down people that committed crimes, people who stole the election, people who invalidated the choice of the American people. We don't need to have Joe Biden taken away as president of the United States because he was never really president to begin with. Joe Biden was merely a name. Joe Biden was merely a face. The true people running this country are the ones that we've identified through the auto pen usage. Those people, unfortunately, cannot be held to any sort of criminal account because the district court in the Washington, D.C. is so incredibly corrupt. But what we can do is secure elections going forward. What we can do is show the various ways in which that election was not secure and the ways in which people lied to ensure that Joe Biden would be crowned the winner. And we will be happy to move forward knowing that those things will not be able to take place in the future. Now, I think we will also likely gain a little bit of happiness, a little bit of glee, being told that we were right back then, we are right now, and we will be right in the future as elections fundamentally change. There is no United States of America without borders and secure elections. And right now, we finally have a secure border. And I do believe that our elections are currently being secured. Now, the last step in the phase of securing our elections is to take the people who made them insecure and hold them accountable, charging them with crimes that they committed and having them convicted and put in prison. Mr. Richer, I hope you have a good attorney because what you did in this meeting by telling the other county recorders in the state of Arizona to not respond to a lawful subpoena, a request for information by the state legislature, you effectively told these people that your station as lowly county recorder was over and above the legislature of the state of Arizona. You took the law into your own hands and you did obstruct a lawful investigation. Now, I can only hope that the criminal referral that they spoke about, the subpoena for information, that this will lead to federal charges because the Department of Homeland Security and the DNI, they are not some lowly county prosecutor. This is the big leagues, Stephen Richer, and you have fucked with the wrong people. Pardon my French. All right. Now, President Trump has unequivocally stated that DHS funding can only be made with the passage of the SAVE Act. And he is urging Congress to take as long as it needs to ensure that the SAVE Act is passed before passing anything related to the budget at DHS. He's taken several measures to ensure that the actual responsibilities of DHS and ICE and other agencies will be taken care of in the meantime. Now, he has told Senator John Thune to cancel Easter recess so that they can go ahead and meet and get the SAVE Act passed. One thing that I was able to determine is that if they cancel Easter recess and they continue to hold ongoing discussions about the SAVE Act, as long as they have a simple majority of 51 votes, they can get the SAVE Act passed. Undoubtedly, you're going to have probably a whole bunch of Democrats who just don't show up, even though they might not be Christians or even practicing and pretending to practice. They probably will just go on vacation because they've already got that time scheduled with their families and, they've already spent the money. Why would they show up to Congress? So all we need is 50 senators and J.D. Vance, and we can get this passed. Bingo, bango, bongo. Now, President Trump made this clear in a call with News Nation correspondent Hannah Brandt. It was actually rather cute. He was like, I just gave you a scoop. So he delivered this message and said that there should be no deal on funding until they pass the critical SAVE Act to safeguard our elections from non-citizens voting and ensure that only American citizens decide the fate of American elections. So Democrats are really trying to get a deal cut on DHS funding. This agency has been closed for a month. Airports have been in disarray. People are pissed. Democrats largely have not cared because they thought they were going to be able to pass the buck on to Donald Trump and say, look, Donald Trump is the reason that the airports are in total disarray and the reason that you can't get on a flight. But everybody knows that the only reason airports are in disarray is because the Democrats refuse to come to the table and make a deal on funding. It's very simple. We need borders, and without borders, we have no country. So we've got to take care of this. Now, if the Democrats do not allow for just and proper security, President Trump says, the radical left Democrats have hurt so many people with their vicious and uncaring ways. What they have done to the Department of Homeland Security, our fantastic TSA officers, and most importantly, the great people of our country is an absolute disgrace. If the Democrats do not allow for just and proper security at our airports and elsewhere throughout the country, ICE will do the job far better than ever done before. The fascist Democrats will never protect America, but Republicans will. Just like the radical left allowed millions of criminals to pour into our country through their ridiculous and dangerous open border policy, Republicans closed it all down, and now we have the strongest border in American history. Likewise, I look forward to moving ICE in on Monday, that is today, and have already told them to get ready. No more waiting, no more games. So Hannah said that in a phone call just minutes ago with President Trump, he told me Democrats now want to make a deal on DHS funding, but he doesn't think there should be a deal made on this until they prove the Save America Act. It's funny. They knew that as soon as President Trump moved ICE into airports, likely some of the people that would be otherwise voting for them or might be supporting them or maybe helping to organize protests for them, those people are probably going to get arrested. More illegal aliens are going to be found in these airports. People trying to flee the country to get away without having to go through the normal process and have their name on a list as somebody who was here illegally. Those people would want to get out of here and then sneak back into the country in some way, maybe apply for a permanent residency, something like that. Also, the optics of ICE coming in and cleaning up the situation that has been brewing in airports for the last 4 weeks, that's going to look bad for Democrats as well. So first, I asked him how long he's prepared to have ICE agents help out at airports, and he told me as long as it takes. Then I asked, some lawmakers are saying that they should just fund TSA while they negotiate on DHS. What do you think about that? President Trump said, now that I did this, the Democrats want to make a deal. And I don't think any deal should be made until they approve Save America. Okay, so you have a scoop, he said. So just a couple hours after this conversation, President Trump ramped up the pressure on the Democrats and any wavering Republicans and said there will be no compromise on funding the Department of Homeland Security until the Save America Act is passed, and he's ready to bundle it into one massive America First package that crushes election fraud, protects women's sports, and saves our children. And then he went to Senate leadership, called out John Thune and said, I don't think we should make a deal with the crazy county-destroying, radical left, country-destroying, radical left Democrats unless and until they vote with Republicans to pass the Save America Act. It is far more important than anything else we are doing in the Senate, and that includes giving these same terrible people, the Dems who are to blame for this mess, a $5 billion cut in ICE funding, a deal which, even when disguised as something else, is unacceptable to me and the American people. Unless it includes their approval of voter ID with picture, citizenship to vote, no mail-in voting with exceptions, all paper ballots, no men and women's sports, and no transgender mutilization of our precious children. Put it all together and also let Leader Thune identify those few Republicans that are voting against America. They will never be elected again. In other words, lump everything together as one and vote. Kill the filibuster and stay in D.C. for Easter if necessary. Make America great again. So President Trump, the art of the deal, he has offered to give Democrats exactly what they want on the funding for DHS and ICE, only if they vote to pass the Save America Act with no amendments, no restrictions, no nothing at all. It's got to be all or nothing. You give me what I want and I'll give you what you want. The problem is they're not willing to do it. Even to get what they've already said they require, President Trump has put them between a rock and a hard place, an impossible situation. So President Trump tying voter ID and proof of citizenship directly to the funding of DHS. So take a listen to this.
So I'm tying Homeland Security into voter identification with picture and proof of citizenship in order to vote. And those two items are the most important thing having to do.
Yeah, mutilization is not a word. But it's my favorite new word because President Trump keeps using it. It's another one of those things that he does. He will use new words, he will make up words and then include them in his truths, and then people go back and reference it, and it like burns it into your mind.
With Homeland Security, so it should be part of the Homeland Security bill. And I'm requesting that the Republican senators do that immediately. You don't have to take a fast vote. Don't worry about Easter going home. In fact, make this one for Jesus, okay? Make this one for Jesus. That's what I tell him. That would be a damn good thing. The most important part of Homeland Security is voter ID and proof of citizenship. Nobody can vote on Homeland Security without voter ID or proof of citizenship. And you can't have Homeland Security without voter ID or proof of citizenship. So we're tying them together. So the Save America Act becomes a much larger proposition, including the funding of DHS and ICE. Now, what is brilliant is that President Trump sent ICE to save the airports. Now, I've talked about this on a couple of occasions, but it's a bloodbath at airports right now. Over 400 TSA agents have quit because they're not receiving a paycheck. You've got people living in their cars, people who are about to default on their mortgages. The shutdown and the complete, utter chaos in travel has led to over $2.5 billion that has been lost. Americans are waiting hours and hours and hours as they attempt to fly, and everybody knows that it's the Democrats who did it. So this has been a black eye on the face of the Democrats, and President Trump has used it brilliantly. So so let me actually play you this clip here shared by DHS about the situation at the airports.
It is that 35 TSA agents have quit across New England since the partial government shutdown began. And as you mentioned, that has union leaders concerned. It's a typical day at Logan. Travelers rushing to make their flight, relieved to find minimal lines waiting for them at security.
Yesterday, we had 2 leave Boston and 1 leave Bradley.
But union leaders say that could soon change. AFGE 2617 President Mike Gazagian says 35 New England TSA agents have quit in recent days, 25 here in Boston, and all tied to the ongoing partial government shutdown.
They felt that it was going to be a secure, stable employment situation, and it turned out not to be. And 2, they essentially ran out of money.
And do you sort of see that next paycheck as sort of the cliff?
I believe that would be the cliff that we're all afraid of going over.
So those people left and they gave up those jobs. They're not going to get those jobs back. They're going to be able to fill them once the funding goes back through. What's even funnier is that the mayor of Minneapolis, one of the airports that has been hit hard by this, and also the largest employer of Somalians in the single industry there in Minnesota outside of NGOs. Jacob Fry went on NBC this weekend, MSNBC, or MS Now, and suggested that President Trump fix the problem at TSA by just hiring more TSA agents, showing that he has a fundamental misunderstanding of what the problem actually is. The problem is that you've got TSA agents that have already left because they are not getting paid, which is why we have lines that are exceedingly long. It's impossible to hire more TSA agents when there's no funding that is being provided by Congress. Jacob Fry said if the goal here was safety at airports, he could hire out more TSA agents who do an incredible job at keeping our airports safe. Nobody corrected him. They just let him keep talking because, of course, he's about as dumb as the people who appear on MS Now. Now, here is President Trump mentioning that if ICE is not enough by deploying at airports, then he will also send in the National Guard to help out as well.
It's great. Let him do that. And I want to thank ICE because they stepped in so strongly. They'll do great. And if that's not enough, I'll bring in the National Guard. We're not going to have the Democrats destroy our country. These people are the most destructive, sick people, the Democrats. They want, and they're fighting for this. They're fighting for men and women's sports. They're fighting for transgender for everybody. Everybody go out, get your kid a nice operation, and change the sex of your kid. They're fighting for, think of it. It's great. Let him do that.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. All right, so these are the airports where ICE was deployed. Look at all of them. First of all, you got Illinois ORD. I don't know which one that is. That's probably like the big one. You got Cleveland International Airport in Ohio. You've got ATL, that's like Jackson Hartfield in Georgia. Houston International Airport in Texas. JFK in New York. LaGuardia in New York. MSY in Louisiana. SJU in Puerto Rico. PHL in Pennsylvania. Phoenix Airport. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And RSW in Florida. Don't know where that one's at. But these are the areas where we've had lines exceeding like 3 hours and such. So Tom Homan appeared over the weekend, spoke with Dana Bash at CNN, and she attempted to essentially insinuate that Tom Homan and the boys at ICE had no plan. They wanted to know what the plan was for having ICE go in and take care of the problems that we're seeing at airports.
With respect, if you're doing this in 24 hours, how well thought out could it possibly be?
Again, ICE has been at airports across the country for a long time. It's just expanding those things. Look, how much of a plan does it mean to guard an exit to make sure no one comes through that exit? We're talking about security options, and these officers are well trained in security, and they're well trained in identification. And look, we're going to do what we can to help TSA move those people through the line.
Yeah. How much of a plan do you need to have somebody watch an exit? That is the simplest answer you could possibly get, the long and the short of it. Take a look. Here is JFK in New York City. Look at this line. Look at this line at TSA. Absolute insanity And this is just one of these airports. You got people going through multiple airports, all those airports that I mentioned, and they're waiting in line for hours. People are being told, show up a minimum of 3 hours ahead of time. I probably think that 3 hours was not enough time. Now, here's the good news. Here's the good news. ICE showed up at all these airports today, and as soon as they showed up, all of the lines went away. All of the lines went away. ICE solved all of the problems. President Trump saved the airports, saved these Americans' flights because he made this decision to have ICE show up. And guess what? CNN had to report on this as a result of President Trump solving the problem. I'm going to have to refresh.
Finally, we can take a deep breath here. The numbers have dropped off. The lines are getting shorter. I think the average wait time now is under 40 minutes. So if you have a flight to catch today, it's a good time to come to Hartsfield-Jackson International.
It was 3 hours yesterday. ICE shows up. They start processing people in lieu of the TSA agents who no longer work there, and they cut it down to 1/3 of what it was previously. So this is a very bad look for all of the Democrats. Now there is no reason. Now there's no reason to even worry because ICE is going to be there. They're going to be arresting illegals. And guess what? They actually have arrested illegals. I do have a video here of an illegal being arrested. This is a family of Guatemalan illegal aliens. They've been awaiting deportation since 2019. And when ICE started arresting them, one of the women tried to flee. This is an arrest occurred before the ICE agents were even deployed in airports. So this happened over the weekend. This was on the 22nd. ICE officers arrested Angelina Lopez Jimenez and Wendy Godinez Lopez at San Francisco International Airport. Again, their final order of removal was from 2019. So they've been hanging out at the United States of America illegally for the last 7 years.
What's your name? Can show the badge.
And the liberal idiots are piling up around the ICE agents. Show me your badge. Show me your badge. How do I know that you're an actual ICE agent? Let me see the warrant. Show us the warrant. How do we know you're legitimate? It's so annoying. I got every single time. I just want to give props to these ICE agents because the first thing that I would want to do would be to Kubaton one of these people in the face. Look at her fake tears, crocodile tears.
I'm asking for your
She's
badge
an illegal.
number.
Get the hell out.
What is your badge number? What is your badge number? We need to see your badge number.
And she's lucky she didn't get her fingers broken.
This is an illegal arrest. Show the badge number.
Okay.
I need to see your badge number.
Step back.
I don't know who you are. You could be someone kidnapping her.
Oh, God. You could be someone kidnapping her. Like, are you kidding me? People are not going to show up to kidnap some random woman from the middle of an airport, put handcuffs on her, and then drag her out and throw her into a squad car. These people are morons. Stupid is as stupid does. Let me say thank you very much. Well, actually, first of all, I have one final message from our friends over here on Rumble, and then I will read through the final thank yous over on Pilled. Excuse me, the gold pills over on Pilled. All right. And let's see here. Okay, so got that right. All right, my friends. As you are aware, right now America is coming up on a very important milestone, 250th birthday. 250 years of freedom, grit, sacrifice, and the greatest experiment in self-governance the world has ever seen. This right now is the perfect moment to make sure your kids and grandkids understand why this country matters. Not just fireworks and hot dogs, but the story behind it all. Very important because something like 2/3 of young people now are in favor of socialism. There is a free guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday, and it's honestly a great way to introduce your kids to how America began, who the founding fathers were, what they risked, why the ideas they fought for still matter today, and how socialism is completely incongruous with American society and those documents from our founding fathers. This kid's guide sends those kids back to the moment in time when those brave men signed the Declaration of Independence. It was dangerous because they knew full well they were risking their lives for freedom. So it breaks it all down in a way that your kids and grandkids can actually understand and enjoy. It's not going to water it down or turn it into boring schoolwork. So if you care about raising kids who know where this country came from, and I know you do, most importantly, why it's worth preserving, then this is something you're going to want to grab. The best part is it's completely free with the special offer. All you do is pay the $2 for shipping and handling. To pick this up, you go to freeusabirthday.com. That's freeusabirthday.com, and the Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday is there for your kids today. America's story matters. Make sure the next generation knows it, because we cannot allow America to fall to communism. You can use that QR code on screen right there, or go to the link below. All right, let me say thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie, Sir Lurks a lot for the shades, Ina for the cookie. She says, thank you, RP. Thank you, Ina. Boys Blanc 89, thank you for the cookie. Mea Tua, thank you for the can. Moon Baby, good to see you, Moon Baby. Hey there, Famalam. I made it late, but I'm here for the news. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Mea Tua. Excuse me, Moon Baby. Thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie, One Thunder for the can, and Sean Joe for the cookie as well. All right, you guys, that is all. I hope you guys had a fun time today. I know I did. And I hope to see you right here tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Or you can join me tonight on Baseless Conspiracies at 10:30. But otherwise, I hope I see you here tomorrow. Good luck, God bless, and I will see you guys next time.